pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, roll, Atlantic. Yikes. You bet. Okay. We don't need any more of these.
All right, folks, are we good? Give me one more final status check here. It's time for another episode of NASA Spaceflight Live. This is episode 6 today. Let me know that you can hear me and see me. I'll be your host. I'm John Galloway here this evening. If you watch my Twitch stream, you may know me as Das, but over here I go by John. I'm down there on the bottom somewhere, I think. And we've got a lot of cool stuff going on for NASA Spaceflight Live today. Really quick recap. I know you don't show up to watch me talk about anything. Really quick pre-cap, I guess it is. About what we're going to be talking today. We've got Starship SN4. We have a very special treat going on down at Boca Chica right now with Starship SN4. And if y'all stand by, we'll show you that in just a second. We've also got some discussions about HLS, the Human Landing System, announcements that came out this week with some really surprising information coming out of NASA. Again, Starship there. We've got launches coming up this week as well. We'll be talking about what you can expect to see launching this week. We've got a little bit of discussion about the recent news on Demo-2. So you know Demo-2 is coming up rapidly here. And we're also going to do our Max Q&A segment as we've been doing. So we appreciate everybody coming by today. Really quick things about the episode. Again, this is a live show. We are doing this live. We're going to show you audio and video and all sorts of live feed stream stuff. And it's also interactive. We want you to be a part of the show here, right? So if you're watching in chat, we're reading chat. We've got people in the background. And if you have a question for us over the course of the stream, like when we're talking about Starship, if you have a Starship question, tag us in chat at NASASpaceflight. That'll actually highlight it for us over here. Our team of operators standing by will actually get your questions and put them into a queue for us, and as we get some time, we'll do some live Q&A with you. So again, we try to answer those questions as they're relevant. If we're talking about Starship, we want it to be about Starship. If we're talking about Starship and you ask about landing, well, honestly, landing on the moon may be relevant to Starship these days. If you ask about something not about Starship, we may hold that question for later. And then at the end of the show, we have a lightning round sort of thing that we call Max Q&A. That's where we take all sorts of questions about all sorts of different topics, even if it wasn't something that we covered during the show. So just be looking out for us today. If you have questions at NASA Spaceflight, add us in chat. We see it over here. We'll grab it. We'll get to your questions, right? So the next thing that I want to talk to you about is, I don't even need to put that up like that. Massive thanks to everybody for supporting the channel here. Over the course of the channel, you'll see super chats come in. We have the new membership programs, all the different ways that you can make it so that we can keep on keeping on with the channel. So if you do something, it won't happen in real time, but every now and then we'll roll back and we'll thank you for the super chats and all that sort of stuff. Again, we really appreciate you. We're able to do this because of your support. We're able to make some of the special things happen like we're going to have happen today because of your support, right? So thank you so much for your support. And again, questions, super chats, memberships, if we don't get to them in real time, please know that we're not ignoring you. We're absolutely going to try and get you a little bit of recognition because we really do depend on you to make this happen. But like I said, you don't come to the show to watch me talk, right? You come to the show to watch other people talk about stuff. With me today, I've got our hosts, our experts, because I just turn on the cameras. On my side here, we've got Chris Gebhardt, Assistant Managing Editor for NASA Spaceflight. How's it going, Chris?
Doing great. How about you, Das?
I'm talking a lot. You know how it is. And
I do.
The other side of me, I've got Thomas Burghardt, one of our longtime, subject matter expert, a guy who knows more than me, over on the side here. How you doing, Thomas?
I'm great. Good to be back on the show.
All right, excellent. And so we can hop right into it with our first topic and introduce our special guest that we've got on the phone here. Is Mary even a special guest now? Mary's NASA Spaceflight through and through. Right?
Indeed.
I mean, so on the phone, which actually means on the Zoom call, we've got Boca Chica Gal. Boca Chica Gal, are you there with us?
I certainly am.
All
nice
right.
to be here.
Excellent. So chat, can y'all hear Mary okay? Can you hear Thomas? Can you hear Chris? Let us know that everything's fine, and we have a very special thing to talk about here at the very beginning. Let's see if this works, right? Let's see if this works. Thomas, Chris, y'all ready to talk about Starship SN4?
Absolutely.
I think we all are.
All right. So there is that. Let's press the button and see if the magic happens. Hang on.
There it is.
There you go. So what better way to talk about Starship SN4 than actually get an absolutely live real-time feed from the side of the road at Boca Chica, Texas, showing Starship SN4. Take it away, guys.
Well, really, I say, Mary, why let's take it away. This is what you're looking at right now, isn't it?
It certainly is. They've been working still underneath, but a lot of the equipment got moved out the way earlier, and they're preparing for testing.
Yeah, and that testing is actually coming up tonight. We understand from the road closures and everything.
Correct. Yeah.
So do we have any sort of idea what kind of testing we're looking for tonight?
I'm thinking typical wet dress rehearsal. Maybe a pre-burner.
Yeah. So I mean, definitely, because it kind of seems like, right, this will be the first time they load the liquid methane and the liquid oxygen into the vehicle for the first time together, right? And if everything goes well, yeah, maybe a pre-burner like they did with Starhopper, right?
Right.
I think we'll see something very similar to the Starhopper campaign, where they kind of go each step along the way. Okay, let's go fueling first, and then if all that goes well, okay, what's the next step? Maybe we get to pre-burner test and get as far as they can before they, if they encounter some issue, they'll maybe stand down and come back to it another day.
Right. Seemed like with
100%.
Starhopper, it took several days of testing before they ever got to the static fire test.
I think in this live view too, we can actually see the propellant lines on the right hand side of right above the fence line there. Hey Dos, do we have that like magic thing where you can draw on the screen?
Actually for this I cannot draw on the screen because I'm consuming this feed differently. Gosh, the one time you ask.
Yeah. Well, I would ask the thing we don't have. So yes, that's my MO after all.
wait, I got solutions. Hang on, I got a solution.
Me somewhere else. But yeah, I think we can see the fuel lines there, right?
Yeah, I think on the bottom right,
Yes,
that's
you
what
can.
it looks like.
I got it. Stand by.
It's like a lift on the left. That's not a prop line.
Yeah.
All right, this is dirty, but
Mary,
hang on a
it looks
second.
like it's. So I know it's a public access road. There seem to be a lot of cars going back and forth. Are those just like workers in the area, or is it back open to the public?
Beach traffic.
Beach traffic. Okay.
Right there. Wait, I got to keep
Road
circling
ends
it. It's gonna infinitely go. Yeah, let's not do that anymore. There you go.
It was a good effort.
Good effort, Doc.
That was the fastest way that I could get a circle on the screen for you. Sorry, I need to pause it.
We were like half a second from like getting trapped in that Superman 2D thing, which a lot of people are going to be upset that I don't know what that's called, but we're just going to move
the
on
prison
quickly
thing, right?
from that. So do we? I guess a question. I mean, because we're talking about pre-burner, we're talking about potential static fire tonight. So how many engines do they have in this?
Just one. One
Just
Raptor.
the one.
Yeah.
How's that, y'all?
Yeah, we're still duplicated once, but
Slightly duplicated. It's okay. It's okay.
But yeah.
At least you're smiling in the static picture.
True. So single Raptor. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is honestly surprising. And the plans have kept changing, because I remember I wrote the article for SN3, and when we originally published, we thought it was going to be one Raptor, and then some guy named Elon Musk on Twitter decided to say, oh, it's actually going to be 3 Raptors. And now this time, we thought it was going to be 3 Raptors, and now it's looking like it's only going to be 1 Raptor. So clearly, plans still changing.
Right.
Do we have what's in that U-Haul or that Ryder truck that just drove by? Like, what sort of stuff do they carry around in those? Do we know?
The super top secret flux capacitor.
You see them every day. Yeah, they just, I don't know, haul stuff from work site to work site.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You know what and one thing there, because I mean, like a lot of the videos that we see, right, you know, it looks like very wonderful and nice weather down there, but just like Florida, you know, we know South Texas can be prone to some really severe storms, and you guys had some pretty strong ones that came through this week. Like you're doing good and everything through that, staying safe for that.
Oh yeah, it kind of blew in and was really windy for a while, and then it died down. We were fine. We didn't lose power or anything.
Good.
Just a big dust storm. Gets very dusty.
Wow. Well, I don't know, man. Thomas, what are you looking? What do you think we're going to see tonight?
Well, yeah, so I think we'll see that kind of incremental approach starting maybe as soon as tonight. I don't know, it wouldn't be very surprising if they, get to maybe a pre-burner sort of test and then, call that a night, come back and get even farther towards a static fire later. And then after a static fire, they're looking at trying to go to 150 meters under a single Raptor engine, which for a vehicle as big as Starship will be impressive, because I thought it was going to take more than one Raptor, but here we are.
This is so I once heard a description of a rocket as imagine balancing a broom with the bristles pointed up and the handle balanced on just one of your fingers and keeping it perfectly balanced as you accelerate it beyond the speed of sound. And I was
Right,
like,
yeah.
Oh yeah, it's about right. But
that's not far off.
But that's exactly what this looks like. I mean, the size of this thing is, I mean, look how small the people are.
Right. The humans for scale is the most important thing in this picture. And the fact, I mean, a Raptor is a powerful engine, so it's worth noting that, obviously. But yeah, it's still, I mean, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I mean...
And then you add the element of, well, this is really only the bottom half of a full Starship, which will have more Raptors and control surfaces and all of that stuff. It's hard to comprehend what the Starship vehicle's scale really is, but I am beyond excited to see it happen.
Well, and I think especially since it's still missing the top part of it.
Yeah.
Like, not just the bottom part. It's like Starship is even bigger than that, just in its... Oh my gosh. I know. Yeah, I mean, because it is worth noting that, like, for as ridiculous as it sounds like for that single engine, you had noted, like, the Raptors are, I mean, extremely powerful. I mean, we're talking about a single engine capable of producing 440,000 pounds of thrust, or about 2,000 kilonewtons. Like, that's a single engine.
and that's SpaceX's deal. Same thing with Merlin, making engines with ridiculous amounts of thrust.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, to put it into perspective, it's basically right smack dab in the middle of what a single space shuttle main engine did in terms of thrust. So, I mean, it's right up there with those extremely powerful workhorse engines.
And speaking of the ridiculous thing that SpaceX does, Mary, we would be amiss to not mention the other Starships near you right now. I mean, we've seen SN5 already.
Yes, that's been exciting to watch too.
Yeah, so
I really like seeing the section with the header tank sticking out the bottom as it was being stacked in the high bay. That was the first time I've seen the header tank like that.
Did it get the right image there, y'all?
I mean, yeah, that is SN5 in the high bay, I believe, and that's got a nose cone next to it.
Yeah.
Right, which has been removed from the high bay, and the bottom section taken back off. So.
Gotcha. And so this is something that we didn't really talk through in advance, but I've got all these different...
There's the header tank.
There's the header
tank.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
I've got all these different pictures and stuff, but we also have the live feed from Boca Chica, so I'm struggling. Like, should we show pictures that we've seen, or should we just stick with the live feed? So y'all just tell me, like, if you want to go back live,
Well,
whatever.
I mean, let's talk about the progress they've made this week, because I mean, so much of the focus really has been on, you know, the ongoing test campaign with SN4, but I mean, there's SN5 that's taking shape in there. I mean, I gotta assume, even though I don't know if we've had a sighting of it yet, but I've got to assume SN6's rings are under construction, if not farther along than that.
Right.
I mean, is that about right? Do you know if you have you seen any of SN6 yet?
Nothing for definite that I could say that's SN6.
Gotcha.
You know?
Because they're not like labeled on the side. It's not like somebody wrote SN6 really big, are they?
That would be really useful. We'd appreciate that, SpaceX, if you're what? No.
Just in a big Sharpie.
There was a what, Mary?
There was a label on the thrust section.
Okay.
Ah, okay.
Was that the section they salvaged from SN3?
No,
Or
this
for
was,
SN5?
this is for SN5.
Gotcha.
It had a label on it, SN5 dome, thrust dome or something. I can't remember exact words, but there was a label on it.
Gotcha.
I don't have that
So-
picture, do I, y'all?
Don't know.
I
Okay.
don't know.
Yeah, I'm just cycling through. I mean, you can see the markings on the side of stuff, right? Like there's tape and almost strike lines and stuff.
Right.
Oh yeah. I mean, part of what makes this just absolutely fascinating to me, I mean, like I kind of just sit here sometimes and I don't really have questions. Like I'm just kind of taking it all in.
Yeah.
Because we never get to see this. Rockets are never built out in the open. So it is just amazing to see how it all comes together and really get a sense of, I mean, I think to me, it really gives the sense of how many welds go into these tanks. And everything, instead of just all of a sudden seeing a picture like, and here it is, you know.
And this is the part of rocket development that we never get to see. You know, everyone goes, you know, every time SN1 or Mark III, before that SN1, SN3, when they, you know, crumpled under cryogenic testing, we're like, guys, every vehicle goes through that kind of period at some point. You just almost never get to see it. This is unprecedented amounts of like publicity that this rocket development program is giving us. So it's not something that I, at least not me personally, am concerned about. And it's more encouraging to see that, you know, this one did so well and is now moving towards further testing.
Yeah, and I mean that is a good point, right? Because we do get to see a few tests, right, of systems overall, but not really like out. I mean, like this, like true like research and development.
Right.
You know, never before done stuff. It really is fascinating to just watch it all come together.
And I did get Chris B actually got us this image that Boca Chica gal took, or Mary took. Yeah.
Oh, dome skirt.
Yes.
It's like printed out on a piece of paper and taped.
Yeah.
With a picture of the ring. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. As if it wasn't
I
clear
do
what
too.
it was. So basically, if you see that paper on a nose cone, you know they mislabeled something.
And y'all, I've got a ton of great questions that have been coming through here. Do y'all want me to grab some of the questions?
Let's do it.
All right, let's go back to the
100%.
the live feed. We'll keep that live feed up there, and let's hit some of the questions that have been coming through while we're sort of hanging out. So here's a great one from Dan Vitale. They ask, does SN4 have legs? It doesn't look like it for the 150-meter hop. So on the screen, what we're seeing live right now, is that supposed to hop? Why doesn't it have legs if it's supposed to hop? That was a question.
They are on there. They're just underneath, and they fold down, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Thomas, do you want to take this? I think you wrote
so
about
I don't know
this.
if we've seen SN4 specifically images of the legs. I know we saw something. It might have been SN3 though on Twitter. But the legs wouldn't be visible from this view because they fold out from underneath the vehicle. But
Right.
yeah, if at least if they're not installed on this particular one, they will need to be before it hops, obviously.
Gotcha. So we previously saw Hopper that had the legs sort of sticking off the side,
Right,
right?
they had like the fin leg looking
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Well,
Mary-
and the last major update we got from Elon back in August of last year was that the landing legs were solidly attached, right, to the vehicle. So this is another large change, to the base structure of the vehicle to put those legs inside like that.
Yeah. So here is a question. Mary, is Hopper close to you right now? Like, how close is Hopper to where you are?
Oh, it's just on the left.
It's
here. Yeah.
If you're not cool doing it, let me know. But is it possible to point the camera over towards Hopper, or should we not point the camera that way?
I would have to kind of adjust it to point it.
That's okay. Here, let me do this. Just see if you can point it over to Hopper for us right quick, and I'll ask the next question. Okay.
Okay.
No worries. We understand that it's going to be stable. You like a little shaky. Like you should see it when I point the camera at stuff sometimes, right? Is there
Try tracking a rocket.
Yeah, exactly. Look. There. No. There you go.
There
Hey. So if anybody had any questions, this is in fact a live feed. Mary, Boca Chica gal, just pointed the camera over at Hopper, and you can see the old, the sort of monolithic legs that are sticking off the side, right, y'all?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oops.
No. Hang on, stand by.
Oh, I can see
I
outline.
see
of
a ghost image of it.
Yep.
Yeah,
There is a ghost image in there. Let's do this real quick, and we'll see if we get that back online. Mary, go ahead and point that back over towards the main event, if you could.
But like what we were just seeing before it went out, like that's a great example of how close all this stuff is, right? Because a lot of these pads of what, and I'm leading to something bigger here with Starship's eventual use of 39A is. We're going to have to start getting used to seeing like things that are normally miles apart from one another be very, very, very close to one another. And that just like really quick pan over to Hopper kind of hit home for me. Like, right. Like, look how close all this is to each other here at Boca, and the Florida Starship launch and landing pads are inside the perimeter fence of pad 39A. Yep. Right, where like Crew Dragon's going to launch from in a couple weeks. It's just mind-bogglingly close, and we're just going to have to start getting used to that.
And of course, a big part of that is the fact that their idea is that if they're going to land a super heavy booster right next to the pad, they need to land it right there so they can put it right back on the launch mount and launch it again. So it's all part of the this drastic change where this vehicle is going to be fully reusable.
This shot of Starship
Yes.
coming out of the fog, and there's Starhopper. That was just, that video is one of my favorites. I like it. It's up there for this whole campaign.
So I spooled up the video there while I'm working on clearing up Mary's video right now. But that was my fault because I asked her to turn the camera, and we knew that the cable was a little shaky.
Well, it was good to see it just for that one moment. But so where were you in the question queue? Because Thomas and I can keep going.
The next question was about hurricane season. Does SpaceX have any concerns about hurricane season hitting Boca Chica down there?
Yes.
They already had that issue once.
They are on the Gulf Coast. The Gulf season is typically active from the beginning to the end. Storms generally form more in the Gulf in the beginning months of the season and in the later months of the season.
Right.
And then ones trekking across the ocean and Caribbean come into the Gulf and slam into Texas, Louisiana, Florida, Mississippi, and Alabama and Mexico throughout the year. So it is a big concern. That's partly what the big integration building is for, to help protect some of the equipment as well as build it.
Right.
But it's the same with Florida. Texas and Florida are very ideal launch sites in the U.S. because they're very close to the equator. But with that comes hurricanes, and hurricanes that are getting a lot more intense. Florida has a little bit of elevation to it, but Boca Chica is sea level. Like the road to get there floods during high tide sometimes. I mean, it's sea level. So it is a concern, but it's kind of you gotta just make do.
It's a trade-off when you're selecting your launch site, absolutely.
Well, exactly, because you could wind the farther up. I mean, because really, when you look at the entire eastern seaboard of the United States, right? I mean, all of like Virginia northward until you get to really remote parts of Maine would be out because of population, densities and land overflight restrictions and all sorts of things. And then it gets too cold. Yeah. Most of the, for huge swaths out of the year. So yeah, by the time you get down to the Carolinas and Florida, where you've got weather you can launch in year round, and Texas and the Gulf Coast as well, you are just in Hurricane Alley at that point,
So I'm also looking at the questions here. There's another question about the Boca Chica test stand. Is there any sort of lightning mitigation? So down at the Cape, we have the big lightning catenary towers that we see next to the launch pad. But what do they do anything like that down at Boca Chica that we've seen?
Not that I'm aware. Mary, there's no tall structures around the pad, right?
No, there's the new one, which I do believe is a communications tower. A portable one, but other than that, no, I don't believe that there's anything for lightning.
This brings up a good question about how they're going to work with Starship 39A and Texas again, because if you're going to be flying back to land at your, not just return to launch site, like to your literal launch pad, you can't have the wires running between lightning masts.
True. So are there wires coming off the lightning tower at 39A on top of the fixed service structure?
There are, yes.
Do they go across where the launch pad is, or do they just go to the side kind of away from the pad?
To the side away from the pad to anchor and ground everything. And and those lines come to the ground right where Starship's launch pad and landing pad will be. Gotcha. So they don't cover it. And Starship's a heck of a lot bigger than 39A.
Right. That's true. So yeah, we'll have to look. So it's either they'll add taller lightning structures or move the structures around, or they're going to take a risk and not have a lightning protection system.
I don't know what they're going to do. That's a very, very good question.
I've literally never thought of that until right now.
Nope, me neither.
Yeah. Very good question, whoever asked that in chat. Thank you. Yeah. Maybe we'll have to look into that.
And y'all, it looks like we were able to restabilize the live stream video there. I've been being quiet, frantically clicking on things in the background, and I just had to refresh some things. I think it might actually have been my home internet here. I'm just doing too much at once. So we're good to go there with Mary's live feed again. So
let's keep going with questions.
Yeah, another question.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's see here. I'm reading. We already talked about Starhopper. I'm scrolling back up at the top here. Here's a good one. And actually, Chris and Thomas, y'all take this question and sort of talk about it. Has SpaceX spoken with anybody about all these videos that we're taking? Positively, negatively? Chris, I know that you've talked in the past about how we follow the rules and regulations, but I mean, we're on the side of the road with a live stream of SN4 right now. Do we hear anything from SpaceX on that? What do they think of that?
Nope. It's a public road.
Yeah?
It's a public road. We follow the rules. We obey what their security guards tell us, what local law enforcement tells us. And nope.
And Mary, you've had friendly relations with, the workers around Boca Chica and the local authorities as far as doing your journalism stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah, and I always try to follow the rules and be respectful, and I've not had any issues.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so that sort of follows up with the next question here. if they do a static fire, they do pre-burner test, is someone going to come and shoo you away from here? Like, you can't stay right here, can you, Mary, when they're doing these tests?
Oh, no, definitely not right here.
That would be awesome, but we can't do that.
We like Mary too much.
But
Little too close.
how far back do you normally have to stay for like a fueling engine ignition test like this?
I think I'm about 1.5 miles away when they're testing.
Yeah.
Which is still pretty close, to be clear.
Which is close, yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. yeah. So yeah, I mean, like any rocket, there does have to be an exclusion zone. So that's when they can close public roads and public spaces when it poses a public risk.
Yeah.
So yeah, anytime they fuel it, anytime they go to light engines, there will be that closure of public land.
Gotcha. So here's another question. Those black tanks on the side of SN4, are those actually tanks? Can y'all tell what those are? Or what are we looking at there that have sort of the lines, the conduit going to them? Anybody have a guess?
I don't know. Chris, do you know? I have literally no idea.
Yeah. They're part of the COPVs, the pressurization system, the helium, the nitrogen. They're part of all of that system.
Gotcha. So we actually got how far away are we right now? Like, is this some sort of massive telephoto lens that zoomed in? Mary, I think you're just across the road. Like, you see the cars driving in front of you, right?
Yeah,
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's one of the safety. You go ahead, Mary. You're right across the road.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's amazing.
I mean, it's like 20 feet to that fence that you see in the foreground.
Right. Yeah.
If I remember correctly from when I was there.
Yeah, she's literally on the other side of the road right now, and that's one of the safety things that we follow.
And it's a tiny 2-lane road. Like,
right.
It's not big.
But we do know, like, if somebody walks across the street and if someone were to try and approach that fence and like stick a camera through it or something, the security guards would come shoo them away. Like, they don't want you against the fence, right, Mary?
Correct.
Right.
Yep, they want us to always be on the opposite side of the road.
Gotcha. But this is
That's
sort of
all the sites.
Gotcha.
They want us to be on the other side.
Yeah. I'm going to grab this real quick. I'm going to grab a couple super chats really quickly from earlier.
Yeah.
$20 from Future Martian, actually. Future Martian says, the live show just keeps getting better and better. Love the live Boca Chica view. Thank you so much, NASASpaceflight, for putting this together. And thank you, Mary, for the amazing photos and videos. So, Mary, thank you for being out there in the heat on the side of the road.
Here.
We've got one from...
You're all welcome.
Yep. We've got one from Beamer57, $2. We've got Nicholas Blom. Welcome to Padrat there. We've got Seth Alderit. Sorry. Why is SN5's nose cones steel a different sheen? Have you noticed a difference in the material or the shininess of the nose cones, Mary?
It seems to have some sort of a film or something on it. There's a few sections where they have taken that off, and it is a lot shinier underneath.
Gotcha. And that
might be removed.
Yeah, well, I'm also wondering if it's part of their because remember how Elon has talked about like this type of steel, if it's polished or reflected to a certain degree, it serves as an effective heat shield and heat resistance. And if that's on the nose cone, right, that aerodynamic heating you get as you're going uphill through the atmosphere.
Gotcha.
Could be part of that. I don't know. That could be totally wrong. But I don't know. That clicked in my head. Reflectivity and shininess clicked in my head. So.
And I don't think I have an easy picture of that to bring up real quick. But I'm gonna, if there's one of those, somebody back in the control center put that in. If somebody has that video that's talking about different sheen or a photo or something. Let's see here. Another $2 from Sal Jovel. Thank you, Sal. Jared Yock with a $10 saying NSF rocks. And then Jean-Noel Castelletto, I think. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. But 100 euros. Is that euros? That's euros, right? First fan from Mary's work. 100 euros coming in a super chat there. So Jean Noel, I really
Thank
hope that
you.
I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Thank you so much for the super chat there. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you everyone who's supporting, Mary's work. We greatly appreciate all of the awesome videos and photos that she gives us. I mean, this view right here is just incredible.
It really is. It's
And
such a. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I every time I think I've talked with you, Mary, like, I always, there's always a moment where I go, "What's that sound?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm just walking down the road back from the site," or "Oh, I'm walking through the swamp. It's high tide right now." And then, right before we went on air, we were figuring out that it's 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 31 Celsius where you are right now. I just thank you, like your dedication. That's my way of like saying thank you, because your dedication is amazing to documenting all of this history literally in your backyard.
Absolutely. That's. I mean. I think I speak for everyone in chat when they say, yeah. People in chat are saying thanks, Mary. Mary's awesome. That sort of stuff right now. So, Mary, as always, thank you so much for what you do in bringing us this these crazy shots of what's going down at Boca Chica.
Well, you're all welcome.
And should we be looking forward to some more of that live shots, maybe later tonight or something? Maybe.
I mean,
Hope so. Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
it's worth mentioning there are road closure notices. We know they're doing tests. We talked about that already. So yeah, maybe the NSF team will be back for that. Hint, hint, wink, wink.
we're sort of keeping our ear towards the ground, and if there's something, you may see a live stream leak here on the channel later, right, y'all? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Stay tuned.
Maybe.
You never know. I think we're getting to the. I mean, we've just been hanging out, chatting about this, looking at the live feed from literally the side of the road down at Boca Chica. Again, Boca Chica gal Mary is there right on the side of the road. We got her a broadcast set up, so this is a live feed. The beeping you hear in the background, that's actually the cranes and stuff moving around. That's it's live footage. So let's see if there's any other questions that we've missed. How many? Okay, here's a good one. How many?
Well, actually, Doss, I just real quick.
Yeah, sure,
sorry, because it did pop up on screen and I couldn't remember the time, which is why I didn't say it. We do plan to be live at 10:30 Eastern, 2:30 a.m. UTC tonight if testing occurs.
Gotcha.
So around that time is when you can expect a live stream from us.
Stay tuned for YouTube, and also like on Twitter, we'll be posting out updates like, hey, it looks like testing's going to happen, or it might happen a little later, stuff like that. Stay tuned, and we'll get you live coverage if we can.
Gotcha.
Exactly.
So do we have time for more questions here? I'll ask the control center while I ask a question. How many serial numbers do we think we're going to see before we get a final product that goes into orbit? Has anybody taken any guesses on what SN will make orbit?
That goes to well, so there's a difference.
Well, no. Go ahead, Tom.
Because there's a difference between a final product and the one that goes to orbit.
Thank you. That's why I laughed. Yes.
The first one that goes to orbit, I mean, if we're talking on like the most optimal timeline, if we see SN4 reach the static fire and 150-meter hop, if that all goes well, SN6 is supposed to get up to a more high altitude, up to like 20 kilometers flight. And then I guess in theory that makes the first orbital Starship no sooner than SN7. Obviously, that is very dependent on the first two doing well and all the results of those tests. But that
and getting the first stage built, the super heavy.
So that's that. Plus, you have to build a super heavy booster because you can't get to orbit just on the Starship alone. But even
what did Elon say? You could, but then you can't.
You can't get it back.
Right. But yeah,
it could SSTO single stage to orbit, but then it would be stuck there with no fuel. So you'd rather wait till you have a super heavy booster and get both parts of that back, or at least attempt recoveries of those two. The difference being, though, that just because it's the first one to reach orbit, that doesn't make it a final product. Like they have with all of their previous vehicles, Dragon, Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, they will iterate these designs to further improve them as they go on. And I don't know if there'll ever be such thing as a final product Starship. Each version will just get better and better.
That's exactly what I was going to say. This isn't like Falcon 9 that has to, in some large ways, have its design locked that they can't tinker with. SpaceX tinkers, SpaceX tweaks and makes it better, and each one of those is technically a different iteration. So I'm exactly with you on that, which is why I laughed, because I don't think there is ever such a thing as a final product with SpaceX.
Yeah, gotcha. So I think there's so many good questions in chat, and we tend to ramble on, right? Questions about thrusters and how tall is the test stand and how many video cameras and all these different things. We'll see if we can get some of those back whenever we do, let's see here, back when we get into Max Q&A. Yeah, but we're going to get ready to move to the next topic here. Mary, on the side of the road, live at Boca Chica, thank you so much for joining us for the beginning of NASA Spaceflight Live today. But we really appreciate you taking the time to sit in the heat. Jeez.
Thank you, and I appreciate you guys having me on.
As always, chat.
Always, Mary. Thank you.
One more time, put some love out for Mary, Boca Chica gal. She is bringing us this super stable live feed from the side of the road so that we can see what's going on out at Boca Chica. So put some thanks in chat over there. I'm pointing at chat when I do this. I'm pointing at you. Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Mary. Mary, XOXO. Mary, thank you. Love Mary. Mary, as always, thank you. So here, Jean-Noel said, get some sleep at some point, please. So thank you for everything you do, Mary. Absolutely appreciate you.
Thanks. Yep.
All right. So you can go ahead and disconnect from the call and stuff like that. Yeah. And if you need any help shutting down the solo, just shoot us a message in the Discord channel. Okay. But you are good to go. Thank you so much again for doing the live video.
Yep. You're welcome.
All right.
Thanks, Mary.
Yep. Bye.
And dinner too.
Yeah, for sure. So moving right along, again, y'all, we're not trying to set this up as some sort of massive, and now we're talking about this thing. We literally had Boca Chica gal on the side of the road bringing us live footage from right there at Boca Chica, right next to SN4, and so we were just sort of hanging out and chatting, right? So thank you for the questions. I know we never get to all of them because we do tend to ramble, but we'll see if we get some of those in Max Q&A. Next up on NSF Live today, we're talking about Artemis and the HLS Awards. So are we ready to move on with that?
Yeah, and I want to talk about something that's very interesting about the strategy that NASA went with when they were awarding these things. We have three very, very different designs. I think we can all agree, right? We have,
oh my gosh.
we have a three-stage vehicle from the national team led by Blue Origin, also including Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and Draper. We have a basically single-stage design. It's technically a two-stage design from Dynetics that has drop tanks on the way down to the lunar surface. And then, as we were just talking about, the single-stage, fully reusable Starship vehicle. They went with three completely different ideologies, like engineering processes, for like, hey, how do we land people on the moon? But I think that is the smartest thing they could have done. You have three completely different chances, or three different ways of solving the problem, with varying degrees of, well, like varying probabilities of success. But as as long as one of them works, you're going to have a lander ready to support crewed landings by 2024. And I mean, do you think that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, just not only that, look at the breadth of the companies that we have. We have Dynetics, and what gets overshadowed a lot is that Dynetics is working with Sierra Nevada, which is building the Dream Chaser cargo vehicle for NASA and the International Space Station. So you've got awesome new synergy from two companies there. You have SpaceX, obviously one of the newer ones, but a hugely dominant force right now. That one was the one that shocked me.
Absolutely.
The absolute most that NASA chose to invest in that. Very happy to see it, but we'll get to why we're shocked in a minute. And then you have the national team. But the national team is led by Blue Origin.
Mm-hmm.
You have in these awards, either individually or based on who the leader of the team is, none of the major former powerhouses in here. That is amazing.
And it's then it's a big part of why we're shocked. I mean, but when you think about it in hindsight, it kind of makes sense the choices they made. You have
Totally.
the Blue Origin bid. I see it as you're bringing lots of experience. I mean, Blue Origin, yes, people are going to make the comment, Blue Origin hasn't reached orbit by themselves yet. And I get that. But you have Lockheed Martin, who is a very experienced aerospace company, including with the Orion spacecraft. You have Northrop Grumman, operator of multiple launch vehicles, operator of the Cygnus spacecraft, and both Lockheed Martin and Northrop have built, satellite buses, lots of spacecraft experience between those two companies. And then Draper, which has tons of experience in the aerospace industry as well. You look at these three bids and you go, the one bringing all of that experience to the table and all of that heritage hardware has got to have a very good chance of pulling this together and making a functional vehicle, don't you think?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, I don't doubt that at all. It's so fascinating to me that how they decided to work together on it. It also to me is in some ways the most complicated of the designs.
Oh, absolutely.
It relies on the three different elements, right? Because Blue Origin is building the actual physical landing element of it. Lockheed is building the crew element, and Northrop is building the transfer element.
Yep, correct.
Which we believe is largely based on the Cygnus design and heritage, which means they have flight.
Flight proven hardware in.
Thank you, proven. That was the word, proven. Yeah, and then so it does kind of seem like the most complicated, but also these are Lockheed and Northrop, like these are companies that have good heritage within the space community, and just seeing that leverage with Blue Origin is fascinating.
Yeah, and that Ascent element, which is built by Lockheed Martin, also incorporates a lot of their Orion experience. So you've got other heritage vehicles built into this, and even though Blue Moon hasn't flown, Blue Origin's Blue Moon design is not extremely new. It's the last few years, but they're incorporating things they've already designed for that lander into this sort of integrated HLS vehicle, which will also use the BE-7 engine, which has been fired on test stands before. So it's already got test stand time under its belt. So there is already hardware and heritage vehicles they can pull from to make this vehicle happen.
So it's not a build it from, I mean, it is a build it from scratch, but it's not build every component of it from scratch.
Right. You're taking lessons learned and things like that from past vehicles and applying that to a new problem. And it's also worth noting that the descent element, which is what the hardware that Blue Origin will be building, Blue Origin has experience with propulsive landings, 11 new Shepard landings at that.
Yes.
And all of those are, precision landing that you need to land on the moon. So Blue Origin has experience to bring to the table too. And I think of the different vehicles, if I was a betting person and wanted to guess which one has the highest chance of completing a mission successfully, that Blue Origin lander looks promising.
And I finally managed to get the video smooth on the Blue Origin.
Yeah.
We're watching it now. Yeah. Okay. I have a question, Thomas.
Yes, go for it.
For that. So what do you mean by, of all three of them, this has the greatest chance of doing it safely? Do you think the other ones are not safe?
Or I guess successfully is the highest chance of reaching the finish line, especially if you put in the 2024 timeline. Give it enough time.
So basically, if I'm understanding you correctly, what you're saying is you think this one of the three has the greatest chance of being selected as the one that NASA will use in 2024.
Yes, and I would like to point out that before the awards were announced, in my head, I was guessing that this Blue Origin lander would show up at some point. When you bring...
Oh, yeah, this was not a surprising one.
Yeah, this one was not surprising. When you bring those four companies together, all of that experience, Blue Origin, very public ahead of time, what kind of Blue Moon landers they're kind of developing, it looked like something that was like, yep, this is exactly what NASA would be interested in. And it's got that 3-element design that NASA's been looking at for a while now.
But that 3-element design, and then I want to go back to something else with the lander. That 3-element design though does add an interesting complication over the others, because you now have to have 3 rockets launch it. Right. Because it all can't launch together, and you can't even really combine them all together unless you used an SLS.
Right, and as we know, originally the plan was like, yeah, SLS, a big heavy lift vehicle, will be available if you want to use that to launch your landers. Now, we're having trouble getting, SLS core stages available for more launches than just the Orion crew vehicle launches. Mm-hmm. So NASA has made clear there's no guarantee that an SLS will be available to launch your landers. You guys got to have commercial launchers lined up. So for the Blue
Moon, we'll get to one proposal that
right,
didn't get that memo.
Yeah, well, so the Blue Origin integrated lander, if they could launch all 3 stages together, would launch on an SLS. But since that option is not available, like you said, you're now procuring 3 different launches, using some balance of New Glenn and Vulcan, and that those decisions. I'm not sure. It's hard to know without knowing the mass figures of each of these elements and things. Obviously, Blue Origin wants to use New Glenn; it's their own rocket. But Blue Origin is also tied to the Vulcan vehicle. They want to see Vulcan succeed. They supply the first stage engine for that. So it would make a lot of sense to launch it on Vulcan, which I think, maybe correct me if you disagree, I think Vulcan has a little less schedule risk associated with it as far as getting online in time to launch these payloads than New Glenn, especially if you're trying to have an early demonstration well before 2024.
Well, I would argue that's correct. I mean, just from the sheer amount of metal that we've seen bent for Vulcan.
Absolutely.
And Vulcan's first flight next year, where I believe the only part of New Glenn's first flight that we have seen are the payload fairings. Correct?
Fairing, and I think maybe one section of like fuselage ring, maybe.
Or one ring section. But very, very, very little. To be fair, they're very secretive.
Yeah,
they could have an entire rocket in there, and we could not know about it.
It is every chance a possibility that sometime later next year they just roll out a completely new New Glenn, and we go, well, there you go, there it is. Of course, we do also know the BE-4 engine exists and has been doing lots of test flying, so there's that hardware too.
But this could get interesting. It'll bring me to my next point. But this could get interesting in the launch contracts for this one, because you're exactly right. Without knowing the mass figures, it's a little hard to say, but I could totally, just looking at what it is, go like, okay, so the lander part, the Blue Origin, is half, and the other part of it is half, right? Just because of the sheer amount of propellant that has to be down in that part. I don't know, could be totally wrong, but just go with me on this. So if New Glenn can launch the lander, and combined the top 2 elements have a mass of about the same. That's about the same. I could see this getting interesting between going, now, wait a minute, do we want to pay for 2 Vulcan rockets to launch them separately? Or do we want one New Glenn to launch them together? And you could just, this could get interesting. Yes, there's synergy, but at the bottom line, Blue Origin getting a launch contract.
Right.
I mean, versus ULA, and how does this work? Since isn't this a project where NASA technically takes possession of it once it's in orbit, or is NASA actually paying for the launches of this? How does this sync with the gateway?
Right. So it's important to remember that the render we have on screen right now is just the descent and ascent elements. The transfer element is not in this picture. So there's another element that has to get launched in part of all of this. But yeah, you are correct in that NASA doesn't choose the launch vehicles. NASA has to approve the choice that Blue Origin makes. And there we go. We're going to see.
Yeah, there you go.
So in this one, you're actually seeing 4 elements. You're also seeing some like spent upper stage below the transfer element. I think those are 2 separate elements. I think the transfer element is the part. Yeah, that part you just outlined is not one of the 3 lander elements.
Right.
But you're seeing there's more to the lander than just that. But I think, oh god, what was it? I wanted to point out that you don't know.
So who's paying for the launch?
Oh right,
is the question.
Thank you. Sorry.
Basically.
So yeah, NASA has to approve the launch providers that these companies propose, And we saw that, these proposals, when they were selected, already included potential launch vehicles. Then this particular one included Vulcan and New Glenn.
I mean, to be fair, Starship only has one option.
Right, yeah, and we'll get to that in a second. But, so NASA doesn't procure the launch services, though. Blue Origin does as the prime contractor. Same thing with Dynetics. Dynetics will procure their own launch services for their lander, and then Starship is a whole different ballgame we'll get to in a second. But yeah,
so then is this more in like the actual launching of the landers themselves and all their associated elements? Is this more in line with how NASA is operating with the gateway elements, like power and propulsion, where NASA's not technically paying for the launch vehicle, NASA's not technically paying for the launch selection or any part of that, NASA doesn't technically take possession of it until it's in orbit? Is that kind of the route they're taking with these landers as well?
It's similar. I don't think, because there's a difference between, operating a mission on behalf of NASA. I think this is more akin to, if we look at commercial resupply, commercial crew, and the gateway logistics contracts, where NASA might not necessarily take ownership of the lander like they are for the power propulsion element and the other gateway modules. I think this is closer to Blue Origin or SpaceX or Dynetics operating a vehicle for NASA, just like SpaceX and Boeing are going to operate Crew Dragon and Starliner for NASA, just like SpaceX and Northrop operate Dragon and Cygnus.
So more like a rental system.
Sure, or
NASA's
buying
paying to rent the services or buy the services.
Yeah, you're buying a transportation service from lunar orbit to the moon's surface.
Right.
So it's a little different that way, and that's again why the launch procurement doesn't happen on NASA's end. It happens on these companies who are operating the landers.
Yeah.
If we want to talk about another lander, the Dynetics lander, that is going to launch. They've said Vulcan is their preferred launch vehicle for that, and Vulcan's is a little bit closer to a more sustainable and reusable rocket design, and this animation kind of dictates the very unique design they went with. The animation shows what is probably supposed to be an SLS upper stage that is no longer the launch vehicle of choice, but gives you an idea. It would launch fully integrated. This design is much more reusable than the Blue Origin one we saw. The Blue Origin, of the three elements, only one is reusable, that ascent element. This Dynetics human landing system, on the way down, you're about to see, will drop fuel tanks off the side, and those obviously are not recovered or reused. But then the rest of it lands all together, and the whole thing goes back up and rendezvous with Orion again after the surface mission. So that part can be fully reused. However, it's not drawing on the same heritage vehicles that the Blue Origin lander did. It doesn't have hugely aerospace giant, experienced companies behind it, although they are partnering with lots of companies, including Sierra Nevada, which is a very experienced company. So there's some there. But I think this vehicle is, maybe a little more, I don't know if ambitious is the right word, but just a little less certain as far as schedule and technical risk compared to the Blue Origin one, but closer to what NASA wants to see in the long run.
Well, which is fascinating, and what I wanted to see is Dynetics actually got the highest marks.
Yes, they did.
Out of all three of them.
The source selection
and NASA
document
associates the least amount of risk with this one, actually. Even though I agree with you, like it's largely completely brand new.
Right. The source selection document has ratings for technical readiness and managerial ratings, based like company structure and how they're going to manage the teams and things like that. And the Dynetics lander received higher ratings than either Starship or the national team lander. NASA was very impressed with this design, clearly.
Yeah. I mean, I admit I was too. I looked at it and I kind of went, "Aw,"
Yeah, y'all. Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. What's up, Das?
Oh no, I was saying we could probably sit here and chat about the landers for like a 2-hour episode.
We probably could.
I also want to make sure that we have enough time to cover the other big news that we're covering as well.
Right.
So are any other final words on human on the landing, the HLS
I
contract?
think
here?
we should wrap up the third lander really quick, because the third one is the one we started touching on earlier in the show.
Right.
The big SpaceX Starship, and comparing it to the other two, the Starship is probably the most ambitious of the three. We're talking a huge size difference, a huge lander, using the Raptor engine and these new thrusters that appear in this render that I don't think we really know anything about, but the idea being you move them up on the lander to reduce hazards with plumes interacting with the lunar regolith. But it's a very ambitious design compared to the other two, largely on sheer size. But it is one stage and fully reusable, which is what NASA would love to see in the long run. So it's closer to the final product they want.
Yeah, well, it's also the farthest along of the three. There's a Starship sitting on a launch pad in Boca Chica right now.
Yes, and that was the other thing NASA was very impressed with. If you look at the report they came out with, I'm going to run through the test timeline that SpaceX told NASA, here's how we're going to prove Starship's ready. First of all, you already have Raptor and Starhopper that have flown and done test firings in the past. That's already done and successful. And then you have a Starship SN4 on the test stand literally right now. Going forward, they're going to do a low Earth orbit demonstration mission with Starship and Super Heavy. They're going to refly a Starship vehicle. Then they're going to do a long duration orbital Starship mission. Then you're going to do a mission beyond low Earth orbit with a Starship. And then an uncrewed lunar landing with this lunar Starship by 2022. That's 2 years from now. They want to do all of these tests to prove to NASA that this design is viable. And caught up in all of that, they also have to demonstrate the in-space propellant transfer, which is crucial to making the lander work. You got to refuel it in orbit after it launches. So it's ambitious, and it might have the most schedule risk. At least NASA cited that as like, look, this is exactly what we want in the long term, but you have to get it ready by 2024. SpaceX has said, this is our very detailed and rigorous testing plan. We will prove it to you that it's going to be ready to go by 2024. And that's what we're going to be looking at.
Gotcha. So
yeah,
we have a bunch of questions that came in while we were doing that, but it is time for us to move on. We've taken the questions and put them out to the side for Max Q&A for whatever time we have left over for Max Q&A. But those were the three different things we were talking about HLS there. I feel bad. It's like I just want to sit here and listen to y'all talk about HLS stuff while I frantically click on different pictures and images. But we also need to talk about what's coming up here at the 27th of May, right? That's coming up in just a second. Before we do that, let's do the What's Launching This Week. So somebody's got a What's Launching This Week segment, right?
Yeah, we'll brief overview of next week. I believe we have a graphic too. There's one launch coming up next week, and it's kind of an interesting one.
That's not the launch. This is the launch.
There we go.
Yeah, the Chinese Space Agency is planning an uncrewed test flight of this new crew capsule, this new crew spacecraft. It'll launch on a Long March 5B, one of their new heavy lift rockets, from the Wenchang Satellite Launch Center next week, or this coming week on May 5th. And this is, we were talking before we went on air, this is probably akin to the Orion EFT-1 mission. It looks like they're only going to do like one orbit from launch to landing, and it'd just be an uncrewed test flight of this crew capsule. And it's not going to launch on the rocket that it would normally launch. You see the image in this graphic is actually what the rocket will mostly look like. It'll actually be in a payload fairing, which is not how they would launch crew in real life, because you need to have an abort system and things like that. Just like Orion EFT launched on Delta IV Heavy, which it will never launch on. It's going to launch on SLS. So there's a couple similarities there, but it'll be interesting and exciting to see a new crew vehicle complete this test flight.
Yeah, excellent. Let's see here.
It's not a launch, but I did want to mention that if you are out on this week, look up into the sky. The Eta Aquarius meteor shower peaks this week.
Gotcha. Is that like visible to the naked eye? You could just go out and look up and maybe get a meteor every couple minutes or something like that?
What is the duration?
Something like that, yeah.
Just looking at. Yeah, I mean, it peaks, the 5th or the 6th of May, up to 50 meteors per hour.
Oh, not too shabby. All right, so not quite one a minute, but that is coming up as well. It's sort of an anti-launch because it's coming back down. Let me grab some super chats really quickly here. I'm going to speed run them if I can. We got one from Brittany Spalding, $2. The only channel I watch religiously. Thank you, Brittany. Thank you for the kind words and the $2 there. Yeah. We have from Art Jokia, €1. Appreciate you, Art. Armin24. 750 ISK, that was a question that'll go for Max Q&A, so we'll put that question in Max Q&A that I see that. And then Gary Blair, great job, everyone. This is fun. $49.99 with a $sign that I recognize because I live in the United States. Gary Blair, thank you so much for the $49.99. We appreciate the support there as well. So next up, the next thing that we have to talk about is Demo-2, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
All right. So y'all have 10-15 minutes to chat about this. It's about 10 minutes to chat about this.
Only 10 to 15. All right.
Yeah, not important or anything.
Give us our 5-minute warning. Start asking us questions.
I'll start frantically waving like this. Hey, I have a
Yes.
I'll see what I can do. But take it away, y'all.
You know, this was a week where it all really started to hit home. We not only passed the 1 month, the 30-day out mark. This past week, we also had all of the pre-flight news conferences from the Johnson Space Center, which every Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, and shuttle mission we've had, and to see those come back was just absolutely wonderful. And it gave us a lot of important information about the flight, about some things that they're testing. With it, it confirmed that May 27th is still the targeted launch date. And that the backup launch date would be the 30th of May due to phasing requirements and the amount of time Dragon needs to get to the International Space Station and meet the objectives of the test flight itself. We also got a cool piece of information, too, that basically said that the Falcon 9 and Dragon, depending on phasing to the International Space Station, right, can take as little as a couple of hours from launch to docking. So that confirms that Falcon 9 and Dragon can do the rapid launch to docking, which we had kind of assumed, but weren't quite sure it could do. And we got that confirmation this week. Or it could take as long as 48 hours to reach the space station. So we got some good info on that. And it just all started to come together. We saw the next crew, the crew 1, 4-person crew training. We saw their training photos this week for the percent. It all feels like it's here, that it's coming together. And I look at the calendar and I'm just like, how can we be 25 days away? That's awesome.
And it's bittersweet because I know, given the current situation out in the world, not as many people are going to be at the Cape. I know I'm most likely not going to be at Cape Canaveral for that launch, which is probably the one launch I was certain I was going to be at. But things change. But I am going to enjoy watching every minute of live coverage of this mission from my home.
Yes.
And I'm gonna share it with my family and say, look, this is historic. This is important. And I'm looking forward to it. I believe NASA has some pretty extensive coverage planned for this mission as far as video coverage goes.
They do. And before we get to that, I just wanted to pause for a second and keep on that thread, which links to what you just asked perfectly. But, the NASA administrator made a plea to people not to come.
Right.
To watch it on television, to watch it on the internet, to watch it with their families, but please to not endanger themselves or others by a mass descension onto the Cape. We know the local cities and municipalities are very leery about this, despite what some officials are saying.
Yep.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But NASA themselves is also taking other precautions and following all of the government mandated guidelines, which includes severely limiting the number of media who could attend. They had to cut many people, hundreds of people had to be denied. Yep. And what they really tried to do, to their credit, as hard as it is for those who were denied, they really did look at, okay, we obviously have to have the national outlets here. You can't not have them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they also worked with every single national and local outlet that leases a building, has a media hut, to actually be able to increase the number of people they have on site, because those places became available for shelter in place. Because the one thing people don't really, I think, grasp about this is they go, well, you're just outside on that big field. You are just outside on that great big field until the rocket explodes.
Right.
And once there's an anomaly, you all have to go inside. Well, how do you do that with maintaining 6 feet separation? Yeah, you know, they were able to work, the Kennedy Space Center worked with the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. So not only will there be a media contingent at the press site, but there will also be a separate media contingent on the Cape Canaveral side of base. And a lot of media organizations are limited to 1 or 2, maybe 3 if it's a national live broadcast thing, but are severely limited in terms of the number of people that can attend. And NASA Spaceflight is very, very fortunate that we are one of them.
Yeah.
We got 1 slot. So I will be there on launch day with our camera, bringing you the live stream. NASA will be having extensive coverage. They will also be providing, thank you. They will be providing a clean feed with no public affair audio, but all the launch commentating, like all the launch director loops, all the things that they're saying to the crew, all the things that NASA and SpaceX are talking about, we'll have a clean feed of that to bring you as well. It's bittersweet. I so wish the team could be there. Like, that thing's going to go up and I'm going to want to hug someone. And not only will there be no one to hug, but that will technically be illegal to do. Like,
right, yeah. You have that self-restraint.
I know. It's just going to be like, come on here.
When you say extensive coverage, we have to point out that we're talking NASA wants to go live 4 hours before liftoff, which is before the crew even gets in the rocket. And then
when they start suiting up is when they go live.
Right, exactly. And then no stops in coverage until they open the hatch at the space station.
Yeah, until that opening ceremony is done. I love it. This is shuttle. This is this is what this is the missions, 24-hour coverage. Yeah. And
a lot of us were talking on our Discord, how am I going to stay awake for 27 hours straight with no sleep? Because that's what I'm going to want to do for this mission.
You got to sleep when the crew sleeps. That's the trick with
crew. See, that's a good strategy. We'll have to.
You got to sleep. You got to sleep shift with them. Yep.
Yeah, this is gonna be. I mean, I might not be able to sleep. It might just be adrenaline the whole time. I'm really. It's hard to understate the excitement for such a historic mission.
It really is. It really is, and I wish many more could be here. But I also hope that a large number watch this online. And share in the moment. And you know what? There's always the Crew 1 flight.
Yeah, exactly.
In
that's
August or September, there is always the Crew 1 flight. And we can hopefully have huge celebrations at that point, right? As the first operational one goes.
This is the Crew test flight. We have a whole slate of operational crew missions coming afterwards that, you know, they might not have that same historic factor behind it, but they are just as impressive, and you know, I hope that tons and tons of people get to come out and see those later, because it's, you know, I like to say this on all of our live streams, as soon as it's safe, please come see a rocket launch, because they're the greatest things ever.
and that too, but Doss, I also want you to throw back up the parachute test photograph.
Got it.
Because this was the bigger milestone.
This was the biggest news that we got. Absolutely.
The 27th and final Mark III parachute design test from SpaceX. It was successful. It was the final one. That it was the last. I mean, it was really the last test in terms of the certification sequence that they needed. Now, what remains for the rocket and for the crew are the day of practice tests, which are the normal parts of the flow, with the crew basically doing what's called a terminal countdown demonstration test. They will go out to the rocket, they will suit up just like they do 4 hours before launch, go out there, they'll get inside Dragon, the hatch will be closed, they'll pull back the arm, they'll simulate fueling and engine ignition, and then also simulate, we had an engine abort on the pad, we need to swing that arm back over, and you guys need to get out and, you know, go to the egress baskets, but they don't actually go down, right? They do all of that, and then we'll have the static fire of the Falcon 9 with Dragon top as another one, but those are normal parts of the flow. They're not the critical tests needed towards certification.
We are completely in the home stretch towards this flight, and it's hard to think just how long we've all been looking forward to this. The first crew launch since shuttle. I mean, there was times where we didn't know what vehicle it was going to be. We didn't know how many years off it was, but we're in the same calendar month as this mission lifting off at this point.
And we not only know this one, we know the following one.
Yep, and that too.
I mean, we know the crew, we know a generalized timeline because we know that this particular Dragon can only stay up for 119 days. So if you take that out to the max, that would be a landing in late September. So that would be an October launch of Crew 1. You know, like we don't know, we might not know if it's August to October, but we know that's coming. We know where that vehicle is. We know who the crew is. They're training. That's really exciting. Like,
yeah, so y'all, I mean, there's more questions have been coming in, and we're also starting to get into max Q&A here.
Why don't we just roll it all together?
Just roll it all together and hop into it. So y'all ready for a Q&A lightning round here?
Absolutely.
I'm going to be timing you, and I'm going to give you 30 seconds to answer each question, then I'm going to cut your mic off, all right? So,
oh, God, being brief. That was always a problem for me.
Chris, just imagine that it is a question answering sprint. I know you like your writing sprints.
Thank
you.
So
this is
that
a question answering sprint, okay?
Okay, gotcha.
Let's pop back over here and see what sort of questions we can get. Again, we've been getting the questions here, so it's time for us to do some max Q&A. So here is one. This is going all the way back to SN5. This is from Future Martian. Any clue as to why the section of SN5 with the header tank has a ring that's a different state array? So we talked about the ring being different, and we talked about a protective coating or something. Is that what we were talking about earlier?
That's
a new
part
alloy
of it. I
on
thought that
SN5?
was on the nose cone, though, not the header tank.
Yeah.
Can we go back and find that of the header tank?
In 30 seconds? Probably not. But let's
not.
We can go to the next question.
Then I don't know. I'd have to see the photograph. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It might be related to thermal protection of some kind, or just a protective film over the steel that they'll remove before flight.
Yeah. So if we get that photo from the control center, I can jump back to it. But if we don't have the photo,
I
there it
just
is.
found it. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Look at this. Thank you. All right. Copy. Like that, and let's have a look at it real quick.
I definitely see that. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Once we actually make it so you can see it, like that.
Do we think it just hasn't been polished?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a different.
Potentially, it's hard to tell for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
But I definitely see what you're talking about. Yeah.
Good question. I almost wonder if that's the ring where the dome sort of attaches, right? Like the way that
would be. Yeah.
dome is shaped. I wonder if that has something to do with the attach point for the dome being in that ring like that. I don't know though, huh? That's a good question. So I guess we don't know the answer. We would just have to guess on that one, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's go again. Max Q&A really quickly. Where is the next question? Is the hardware on the outside going to end up on the inside of it eventually? Now, wait a second. What? This one's from Brittany Spalding. Is the hardware on the outside going to end up on the inside? Probably about Starship,
yeah,
right?
all those tanks, all those pressurization tanks and helium tanks. I would imagine so. I've not seen a render or anything of Starship that has those on the outside, and that would become really hard during atmospheric reentry.
Gotcha.
I would imagine they're on the outside now just for ease of access if they have to pull it off and swap it out. But those things are always usually on the inside.
Yeah, they're working on it so rapidly. They don't worry about packaging it all up inside because again, these are for the shorter hops. They're not re-entering and that sort of stuff, right? So I imagine those would be inside. That's a great answer. Here's another one. This one's from Jean Noel. Why is there a loudspeaker under Hoppy? Did anybody see an image with Hoppy?
Did not.
Let's see if I got
that.
something here.
Nope.
So here we go. I've got a picture of what I think is the side of Hoppy.
Oh yeah,
that is Hoppy.
We saw some new video cameras and things mounted on the side.
Those look like speakers, don't they? Right there.
They do indeed.
Huh. Yeah, I hadn't noticed those before. What do y'all think those are for?
I mean, I have speculation the cameras are probably
Enhanced.
they want different views of all the testing they're doing right next to it. I
I
don't
mean,
know if I
that-
have a
that-
guess for the speakers.
Those also might be, yeah, I mean, they're speakers.
Yeah,
but,
those are definitely
I don't know.
cameras. So what they're going
I
to
mean,
do, they're actually going
announcements
to
at the pad, like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
they're going to
Measuring
play the
sound
live
level?
commentary from NASA spaceflight to the pad during the no, I made
Surprise,
that up.
everyone.
I don't know why they would have those speakers pointed at the pad. YouTube, you can speculate why those are there, but that's another great question. Let's see here. Do we know? We've talked about Starhopper a lot, so I'm going to go forwards. Do we know if the version of Starship, so going up to HLS awards and Starship there, do we think that the lunar Starship, the lunar ship, the moon ship, whatever we end up calling it, will be made out of the same materials as the reusable Starship, or do you think they might be able to make the moon ship out of a different material if it's not intended to re-enter? That's a great question.
I'll take this one. So
Go.
yeah, it's not going to re-enter. So it's not going to be that bare steel that we see on most of the under renders.
Right?
And in the render that NASA gave us, it looks like it's painted white in some way. Yeah, there you go.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're going to change the build material. I think it's more likely they just paint over the steel or put some protective covering over it. You don't want to take apart your entire manufacturing process for one variant of your Starship vehicle.
Right.
I think it'll still be a stainless steel vehicle at its core. It'll just have extra, layers on top of it to make it look different.
Gotcha. That's another thing that I didn't even think of when I saw the renders. We were all curious about what the thrusters were, right?
Right.
The landing lights or whatever. I mean, I liked your idea about it not interacting with the regolith, like we
Right.
know would be a problem. But in terms of what it's made of, that's actually a really great question. Thanks for that one. Here is another one. Let's see here. Well, I mean, since we have the thing on the screen, will SN4 SN5 have lateral stabilization thrusters? So if we have hoppers or if we have SNs that are doing hops, do we think they're going to start adding some of those thrusters to them?
Like the cold gas thruster. I mean, Hopper had
Yeah.
thrusters on board. So I think it would be weird if they didn't put the same things on SN4.
Gotcha. So we'll be watching the videos from Boca Chica gal Mary down there and see if we can start to spy thrusters being installed, right?
Yeah, and it's very possible that doesn't get installed until after a static fire test is complete and they go towards actually hopping.
Gotcha. All right. Let's see here. And I'm just, again, lightning round, seeing how many we can get through. Would the non-centered Raptor engine be a problem with the flight path? So I'm not exactly sure what the context is there. I assume that that's
if
something
you pull
about
up the image, it's hard to tell because obviously Mary can only get so close to the rocket.
Right.
The Raptor does look like it might not be perfectly centered. This is of course because the Starship isn't really supposed to have one single centered engine. It's supposed to have a cluster of 3.
Right.
But the Raptor engine can gimbal a bit. So especially if they add, horizontal stabilization thrusters, the combination of the thrusters and the Raptor gimbal will be able to counteract that a bit. So it shouldn't be a problem, I don't think.
Yeah, I was trying to see if I had an image that showed that, but I don't have an image like that queued up. But you're absolutely right. It's hard for us to get. It's not like we get a perfect image looking exactly at it.
Right.
How off center is it? Will it be able to gimbal to fire through the center of mass? We are sort of playing roadside rocket scientist here, which I know we all love to do. But that is another great
Gosh,
question.
that's a phrase in 2020, isn't it?
Roadside rocket scientists?
Yeah.
I like it. Here's one about HLS real quick. In the Dynetics video, they show Orion docking with its lander. Do you think it's pointing to not having Gateway in its plan? So guess anything about that Dynetics video.
Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. I mean, that all of them have to. Orion
Right.
has to dock to all of these because the Gateway has been eliminated as a critical path item to the lunar 2020. Basically, forget that Gateway exists for lunar 2024.
Gotcha.
Yeah. All 3 of the landers are capable of either docking to Orion or Gateway. They can both do both. So going forward, if Gateway becomes an option again, or if Gateway is somehow ready by 2024 and they want to use it, they can. But
Right.
they're all required to be able to only dock to Orion.
Which, can I just say right here and now, I cannot wait for the photograph of Orion docked to a freaking Starship.
I think we might know. I think we might know a CGI artist by the name of Matt Crawford who might be working on something.
I thought I
But
saw
cannot
something
wait to
like
see it
that.
because it will look hilarious.
Yeah, that
I just love because you're so used to the smaller thing being the lander.
Yeah.
Sorry,
was something.
I'm all here for funny size differences, like in spaceflight.
That was something that I didn't even really think of when they launched these landers. They're not going to launch them with human beings on board. You'll launch the lander. Unless maybe Starship, I don't know about this, the moonship, Starship thing, but having Orion come up and transfer crew over, you wouldn't design the Dynetics lander to launch with humans on board, right? You would ferry them up afterwards, correct?
Yeah, well, so I think you would launch the lander first,
Right.
just so the crew has less time to wait on orbit for its lander and stuff. And I also want a comment that you just made. I don't think the Starship lander will launch with crew, at least not in anywhere in the near future. I think they'll launch it uncrewed, launch the crew with Orion, rendezvous, etc.
Right.
But
Gotcha.
boy, you can see the direct path that that's
absolutely.
headed.
Yeah.
But
Jeez.
I mean, the only step then is crew rating the Super Heavy booster.
Right,
You've got
exactly.
a crew rated launch vehicle. So.
Yeah, gotcha. So, sort of wrapping that one up, not having Gateway in plans right now, is that an official announcement, like Gateway is still a thing, but it's not in the critical path for 2024?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, no, exactly what you said. Yep.
Gotcha. Excellent. Here's another question from Raj. Raj asks, after the crewed lunar landers have launched, what are they going to do on the moon? So are they going to do science? Is it just to get people there? Did we know anything about HLS and having some sort of mass for science capabilities, right? You have to be able to carry these experiments to the surface of the moon, or is it just get humans there and put down a boot?
Yeah. So this is arguably one of the things that has some members of Congress going, great. And like, we're saying all the right things, like going back to doing all these things, but the bare bottom fact remains that no, we don't have an answer for that. We don't know what any science objective is to the landing in 2024. We don't know what people are proposing we attempt to bring back from the surface of the moon. I mean, we don't know. I mean, I am 100% beyond certain the scientific and astrogeology community has a list longer than anyone can imagine of what they want. But this has been part of the messaging problem that NASA has consistently had with Artemis and the lunar element and the gateway is no one's saying we shouldn't, but please give us more information as to what you're actually going to use that for. Right. And in these announcements today, trust me, this is the quick version. In those announcements for the lunar landers and everything, the two co-chairs of the House Science and Space Committee wrote a fairly scathing letter to NASA for going through with these when NASA has yet to provide the committee with the multiple times requested analysis and detail of what will the Artemis program actually do.
Gotcha.
And enable. And NASA has not provided that document to the committee.
Gotcha. So
years.
Still sort of up in the air on exactly what they're going to do, right?
Right.
But there's no shortage of reasons to go.
Right.
To put it that way.
Right. And that should be made absolutely clear. I'm not advocating we don't do it. I'm just saying we need this other piece of it very, very quickly because that's the piece that justifies it.
Yep. Gotcha. So we got another one here, and again, I'm lightning rounding it here. There was a question about where'd it go? The DM2 on orbit extension, like how long DM2 was going to last. We know that has to do something with solar panel degradation is sort of a limiting factor. But somebody saw, this was Parker Huntington saw that DM2 could be on orbit up to 119 days. But if it's docked to something, it can be 270 days. Have y'all heard that, or do we know?
So there is a mismatch here between the solar panels that it appears that were used on the trunk, the Demo-2 trunk,
right?
With the long duration elements.
Okay.
Right. So the solar panels that will be on all of the operational crew missions, the Crew 1 and beyond, so the flight after Demo-2 and beyond, Dragon will be able to stay docked to the International Space Station, no problem, 6 months.
6 months, okay.
6 months at a time.
330 times 6.
Demo-2, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but here's my understanding of it. the capsule for demo, right, when everything got yanked forward, right, and Demo-2 was still a test flight, but now with a capsule that could do a long duration mission. NASA did not commit to a long duration mission early enough for SpaceX to justify the added expense of the solar panels that will last longer.
Okay.
So they basically used ones that can last up to 119 days because, hey, it's a 14-day test flight.
Ah, gotcha. So the actual ones
that's the understanding I came away with, because I don't know. I mean, if you got other ideas, let me know, because no one asked this follow-up question yesterday when this was said, but there's just a mismatch on the solar panels didn't need to be long duration.
Right.
And now that's a limiting factor in how long it can stay up.
Gotcha. But the future, the actual Crew Dragons that are going to be flying will have different panels that should have, or our understanding is they'll have different panels that'll extend their duration, right?
Correct.
Gotcha. All right. Good deal. So many good questions, y'all. It's 6:31 now, so we're a minute over our time. We always run out of time. We could literally sit here and just talk forever. Let me see if there's anything else. Whoa, yeah. That's not a short question. I don't think we're going to ask about who didn't get picked for a lander. Wow, what do you think about certain companies that didn't get picked for a land? Let's just.
Wow. No. I've got no. I can hit that very quickly.
Oh, geez. Okay.
No. But Boeing submitted a bid back in November that met the deadline for the lunar lander.
Right.
It was a lander that could only launch on the SLS Block 1B, which is Artemis 4 or beyond.
Right.
And in the selection documents, NASA rated the performance, or NASA rated the overall proposal was characterized as, quote, inaccurate and possessing, quote, no significant strengths. Boeing was also cited for, quote, significant weaknesses, end quote, in its proposal for pushing back on providing its software source code. So they eliminated Boeing back in they eliminated Boeing a while ago.
I'm just going to sip my tea and wrap up the show here.
Yep, that is the right way to respond to those comments, I think.
Jeez. Again, y'all, we always get through this.
All I did was quote the NASA
document.
I
know. I got a 10-foot pole over here, but I'm not even going to get it to touch this. I appreciate all the questions, y'all. We always run out of time. There's so many good questions. There's a queue in chat here, and we never have time to get through them all. We could hang out with y'all for hours and answer questions, but that is going to bring us up on the end of NASA Spaceflight Live. This is episode 6 here this week. We appreciate everybody hanging out. Again, our subject matter experts, the guys on either side of me here, Chris Gebhardt, Assistant Managing Editor for NASASpaceflight.com. Chris, as always, it's a pleasure.
Awesome, Doss. Thanks.
And you can find Chris over on Twitter. Down there in the little white bar down there, you can see ChrisG_NSF is where you can find him on Twitter. And then on the other side over here, Thomas Burghardt. Thomas, thank you so much for your time again today.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be on as always.
Absolutely. And then down there, his Twitter handle as well, at TG Mets fan with some numbers after it, 98 actually. So if you want to follow Thomas on Twitter. And again, I say this because it's a great way to keep up in between shows, right? Tweets, news articles, commentaries, video comes out. If you follow these two nerds, you'll be able to get that in your Twitter inbox, whatever they call it. I don't have a snazzy name for that or anything. But that's a good thing to do. And let me do this as well while we've got everybody here. I want to do a very special thanks with no background music today for our launch director supporters. So again, new on the channel here, you can actually support what we do by becoming a channel member on YouTube. And we've got 5 of them now, launch director level or above. You get your name in the credits here on the show. Levi Shin, thank you so much. Jared Yock, Gerard, Hammond, Dan Strait, I'm going to go with, and then Kevin O'Grady. We really do appreciate your support so that we can keep on keeping on with NASA Spaceflight Live here every week. Again, all the other super chats and stuff that came through, memberships that people signed up for today, the super chats, all the questions, people that just, I don't know, like and subscribe. We're on YouTube, right? We're supposed to say that. We really do appreciate what? We are.
It is. Agreeing with you.
It is. And one more thing, I'm going to make this comment. We had that live video from Boca Chica earlier. Boca Chica gal, Mary out there, we were able to get that gear down to her, an entire broadcast kit. She's got a new camera. There's new lenses and stuff like that. part of the support that you do here for NASA Spaceflight Live makes sure that we can extend our coverage in the live streaming kit and our data and all that sort of stuff that Mary is going to be using down at Boca Chica is because of y'all's support. So thanks everybody so much for believing us and supporting us so that we can help bring you all this wacky space nerd content. I can call it that, right? Yeah, I have the microphone. I can call it that. All this space flight content and coverage that we hope that you know and love. Did I miss any other Super Chats? Oh, apparently a couple other Super Chats came in while I was running my mouth. So let's grab Pablo Martin. Welcome to Red Team there. And Armin24, welcome to Padrat. I appreciate you there as well. So again, you can sign up for that anytime. And if it happens during the show, we may say your name out loud. But that will do it for NASA Spaceflight Live this week. I'm your host. I'm John Galloway. You can find me on Twitter. It's gone now. But I'm down there, MK Space Academy. That's why the shirt says Kerbal Space Academy. Also streaming over on Twitch. And I have a Bluebird camera. All right. Anyways. I've got this Bluebird family in my backyard, and I've got a live stream up of them. But anyways, y'all, as always, we appreciate you hanging out with us here for NASA Spaceflight Live, and we will see you next week. Oh, we may see you when there's some tests going on, right?
Tonight, no earlier than 10:30 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, Boca Chica. So, anyways, we will see you nerds later. Look at the channel. If you see another live stream link appear, it may very well be that there's going to be some more live footage from Boca Chica. But thanks again for watching us. NASA Spaceflight Live this week.
Propulsion continues to be normal. RCPA chamber pressure looks good.